Hello, welcome to the Squirrel Tail. Now, for making this horn, the first thing I'm going to do is take a raw horn. This is kind of an old one I've had laying around, likely came locally. I'm then going to set up my work area. I'm going to take any old rag, a thin piece of wood, and stick that in there. Like I said, I'm trying to show you how to do this with the minimum tools. You can make a little jig like this, just a board with a hole drilled in it with a little peg. It'll stick in the vise. That works a little nicer, but this will work too. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off all that junk in the back. So I'm going to take some masking tape and find kind of right where that junk ends and bring that around. This is only a rough cut, and tape around the base of the horn. I'm then going to take your common hardware store hacksaw and cut around the base. Just like that. I then can get rid of the tape, and I have a rough cut. The next thing I gotta do is figure out where this inside the horn, you can see it's hollow inside, where it becomes solid. So you take a wire, I'm going to match that radius, I'm going to bring that wire in, and that's telling me right there that it's solid there, so I can mark that, and then I'm going to go a little bit in front of that and draw a line to cut. Not much. I'm going to bring that line around. I do find that the wire will oftentimes give you a false reading, so I like to go a little closer to the line. And again, you're going to take your hacksaw and chop the tip off. So I chop my tip off. Again, I'm going to check where that horn is saying that it should be solid at. Just like that, I might have got a bad reading. saying I got about an inch to go. I'm gonna mark that. So I know if I get past, if the drill bit gets much longer than this, I have an issue. So I'm now going to stick the horn like this and drill crossways. And now I know where to put my hole. And then I'm going to draw a few lines to make sure I stay square with the horn. And you want to take your common, well, in this case you can use any knife with a point, and stick that in the center. And gouge out a nice hole. And then I'm going to get ready to drill my hole. I'm going to start out with a 3/16 drill bit. And I'm going to put in your common drill. You can use a wireless drill, a hand crank drill, or in this case an old corded drill. I've probably drilled 20 horns with this drill here. But I'm figuring most of you guys have an electric drill like this, so that's why I'm using it for the video. Like I said, I started with a 3/16 drill bit, and I'm going to probably use this just as a pilot. I'm going to get that on my mark. Make sure it's tight. I'm really going to be looking making sure I'm going towards the center of the horn. When it's doing that, that means you've likely broken through. So if I show you this, you can see I now have a hole that goes through the horn. The next thing I want to do is get rid of this junk on the outside, which is a pretty easy process. So to clean this outside up a little bit, the first thing I'm going to do is take one of these rasps. These 4-in-1 rasps are great for horn work. And you can pick them up at a hardware store for like less than 15 bucks. So I'm going to go over everything using the coarse side. Once I get the roughest of the rough out, I'm going to take a bucket or a can of water big enough to put the horn in. and dip it in there, and I'm going to let it sit there for about 10 minutes or so. So now after you let it soak in water, the horn will become a little bit softer, and that will make it scrape really well. So again, I'm going to take this old pocket knife. I'm going to start scraping it down. So when I'm scraping, I'm holding the blade vertical to the horn and just pushing. I'm not carving, I'm not whittling. I'm just pushing. That's the key to scraping. You don't want to carve these, then you end up with gouges in most cases. And you constantly want to be moving so you don't end up with a flat spot. Now that the horn is dry, I can go through and file my troubled areas again. Something you can also look at is the thickness of your base. You might want to try to even that up a bit. I can see I have a lot more material there. So I'm going to take the rough, it's a lot more thicker here than it is the rest of the horn. So I'm going to take my rasp side. Even that out a bit. Now that I soaked it again, I'm gonna do another scraping. So again, blade vertical. You know what, you can use a pocket knife, you can use an X-Acto knife, you can use a utility knife. You can use a furniture scraper, they all work alright. And I think that's good at the moment. So you can see the horn has a hole in it, the base is trimmed, and I got most of the roughness now. The next video I'm going to show you how I'm going to shape up the neck a little bit to make it look a little more attractive. Hello, welcome to part 2 of making a simple powder horn. This is how the horn looked last time you seen it in part 1. There will be a link to part 1 in the description. So what I want to do now is shape the body so it looks attractive and also has the ability to have a strap so it doesn't slide off. So what I'm going to do is take a Sharpie, and I have that little junk there. Right in front of that junk, I'm going to draw a line all the way around the horn, trying to keep it square to the body. Just like that, so. And then, what I want to do is take a hacksaw. And carefully cut just about the depth of the teeth, maybe a little deeper, around that line. Like I said, I'm not cutting through the horn, I'm just cutting along that line. You can see the little cut I made there. And maybe, probably to start, probably only like a 32nd of an inch deep. After that, I'm then going to take this file and going against this edge, I'm going to come around that line. Make sure you guys can see that good. And I'm holding it about 30-degree angle to the horn. You can see I'm starting to work that surface down. So I'm starting to work this edge around, and now I want to kind of blend it in. You know, come down to where your sole mark is. See, and now that I have it that far, I am going to come in and, now that I got to my sole line, I will come in and work the rest of the horn down to make a really nice even taper. So I got that roughly worked in, and I think I want to go a little bit deeper. So I'm again going to take the saw and just go right up against that edge and lightly go around the horn with the saw, creating a little cut. And I'll repeat what I just did with blending that file mark out. So it's looking good. I think the next thing I'm going to do is blend that a little bit more with a scraper. Now to do the scraping, I am going to come to a different location. Like I did in the other video, I soaked the horn in water. I'm going to sit in my relaxing chair and then lay a towel on my leg to hold the horn. And I'm going to scrape towards the neck. I'm going to start up on the back and work the horn in a rotation like this. And you can do this while fishing or while relaxing. Put your phone out in front of you and listen to your favorite YouTube video. Maybe watch some of my old squirrel tail videos. And just keep working it around and around. Okay, so this is how you seen the horn last time. I got that angle nice and worked down. Now this step I've already actually done on this horn because I had my camera set wrong, but I'll still go through the process. I want to make that horn look like this, the spout. So I'm going to take a 1/4 inch drill and then drill through it. Make it a little bigger. And then I'm going to take the end of a file and I'm going to file it open a little bit more. And this is just a file without a handle. Any file will work, and these sharp corners act as a reamer. And it makes for then a tapered hole. This will make the powder flow out of it nicer and also make it easier for you to get a seal on your peg. So now that I've done that, the next thing I want to do is shape the tip a little bit more. So I'm going to try to make it round instead of oval. So I'm just going to kind of follow a radius on the side. There, so you can see better. And just work a radius and try to get that hole in the center. And also get any marks off it. So that tip's looking good. But now I notice that it's not quite as deep here, so I'm going to go back behind that shoulder. Get that shoulder good. And I would say this is pretty well roughed out. You know, I do have some finish work on it, but that will be later. So, the next thing I want to do now is get this base a little bit square. So the next thing to get the horn base square, I'm going to use a piece of coarse sandpaper. This is 100 grit. I actually prefer 80. I'm going to take the horn, I'm going to take a Sharpie, and I'm going to cover that edge in Sharpie. just like that. And I'm going to take the horn and hold up here and start pulling backwards, putting even pressure along the horn. And yeah, you just want to lay the horn on a flat surface. And you want to keep looking to see as the Sharpie disappears. Another option is to take a board and a sanding belt, and then you can do the same thing. They work about the same. Now you can see all the Sharpies pretty much gone. So that tells me that the horn is flat on the top here. And I'm going to take another piece of sandpaper, a smaller piece, and kind of go around the inside edge a little bit. And then the outside edge. Basically removing any small burrs. So now the body is roughly carved and the spout's roughly shaped. So I'm ready to put a plug in. Hello, welcome to part 3 of how to make a simple powder horn. This, as you've seen in part 1 and 2, is what the horn currently looks like. The next step is to get a wooden plug in the back. Now I have this piece of cherry. You can really use any wood. I've made them out of pine before, but this cherry will give it a nice natural look. So then you want to clamp it to your table, or in this case, I'm just clamping it to my vise. Which sounds kind of weird, but what this does is allows me to have hold it in this position. And then I'm going to take my horn. And now you can round these up using a mandrel, but I'm, for this video, assuming you don't have access to a lathe. So even if you don't have a lathe, what you can do is I'm just going to take it and just trace around that horn. And then I'm going to take a coping saw. These are very affordable, probably maybe 20 bucks at the most. And I'm going to start cutting it out. Now a coping saw is one way to do this, which you can see I was getting it done in, probably 15 minutes. I would have had it cut out. But I'm going to be a cheater. And since I have the equipment, I might as well use it. You can see I got it cut out, and now I have my plug. Something I want to do right now is mark a line here and on the horn, and that'll be very helpful. And actually I want it on the bottom. That'll be very helpful later. So once you get your slug cut, there's a few things you want to do. You want to make a mark on the horn and a mark on the top of the plug that line up. That way you know how the plug is going to go on. And then you also want to mark which one's your top. I'm then going to put the top towards away from you on the vise and take your rasp, your 4-in-1 rasp like you used in the other parts of the video. And I'm first just going to go around, get rid of all the saw marks. Once I get rid of the saw marks, I'm then going to start working a taper. If you look on the inside of the horn, you can see it tapers to a point. So I'm going to put my top out. I'm still going to be using the rasp part. And I'm going to put about, I'll say, a 5-10 degree taper on it. And if you have a belt sander, you can just set your table at 5 degrees, and then you can spin it around and work it a little bit to get that taper going. And now I'm going to line up that line. I can still see that I have a ways to go. It's not ready to start going in yet. So Just keep going around, working your taper. So yeah, as you work that taper down, you'll then want to look down it and try to see where it doesn't want to go in and mark that area. You can see there's air there, but it's not going in there, so that's where I have to take the material off. Okay, now it's right. And you gotta repeat this step a lot. So yeah, you keep working the plug as it gets deeper, and it might take a while. But as you can see, I'm starting to only have a handful of small gaps. So I'll keep working them down. Now when it starts getting deeper like this, something you might have to do is knock this corner off in certain areas a little bit. That's easy enough to do. Just knock it with the file. And I still have some gaps up there, but I'm starting to get a pretty good seal on that. I'll take a couple more files. Now that you are getting farther down, it's worth it to maybe use your smoother side of the file. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So I think now that it fits pretty good, and I'm just going to draw a line to see how deep I am. And I'm adequately deep. The next thing I'm going to do is boil this horn. Well, I'm going to drill a few holes and then I'm going to boil the horn and fit it on. So, the next thing I'm going to do is get 2 holes for a tack. So, I'm going to take a rule. And I'm going to draw 2 lines across from each other. And then I'm going to measure down 3/16 of an inch. And do the same thing on this side. And I'm going to take a knife and keep with the theme of this video. You can use the old pocket knife. I'm going to get 2 marks. And then I'm going to take a finishing nail. I'm going to snip the head off. I'm going to take my drill. And put that in my drill. I'm then gonna try that again. That time it didn't work. I'm gonna try to choke up a little bit on the drill, or on the, basically I'm using the end of a nail as a drill. And now you can see I have 2 small tack holes for the plug when I go to attach it. The next step to fit the plug is to boil it. There's 3 different ways you can do this. You can use water, oil, or a heat gun. I think the simplest way, although you don't get it quite as hot as the other 2 methods, is just to use straight water. So I just have regular water in there on a pot. And this can be done on a kitchen stove or any, well, other than maybe a microwave, any way you would normally boil water. Just for video purposes, I'm doing it on a propane cooker. So just start getting the water warm and put your horn in. And then let it just sit until you see bubbles. Now the horn is not quite ready, but when it is, you'll want something to get it out, so softly grab it with pliers and then grab it with a gloved hand. That will make it easier to grab without burning yourself, which is kind of important. So as you can see, the water is now boiling. I'm going to go over to where the plug is. So like I said earlier, I'm just going to grab it out with pliers and put it into the gloved hand. And then I'm going to do what I do over here. I got that in pretty good. Take a piece of wood. I don't need to go deep with the tack. This is only temporary. I do have a decent seal, which is a good thing. So yeah, there you go. The plug is in for now, so now I'll let that cool. So now that you let the horn cool, the next thing you want to do is start shaping the plug. To do this, I'm going to take the board I cut the plug out of and clamp it somehow. You can just clamp it to a table. My bench doesn't do that well and I like it a little higher. And then I'm going to take a rag and stuff the horn down in. And that should be good. You can see now that gives it a semi-convenient way to hold the plug. Might need to adjust it a little bit. And then I'm going to take a 4-in-1 rasp and I'm going to start filing the edge. You want to kind of, now you have two options here. You can make it domed or you can make it flat. If you're going to make it flat, you just take all the wood off. If you're going to make it dome, you just kind of work the edges down. And something I meant to mention but forgot to. If you want it to be perfectly round, you would first boil the horn, put it on this, then cut your plug out, and then reboil and reattach. And if you're doing this, you might want to use oil. This is just a mandrel I turned on the lathe, and that would round it up. So then this would be perfectly round, but I'm kind of, for this video, assuming you don't have access to a lathe. So I'm just doing an oddball shaped one. This horn would be, well, not a fancy one, would actually look very similar to many, if not the majority, of original horns. Now, you can do it all with that 4-in-1 rasp, but if you have some larger ones, that kind of is convenient. It's actually looking pretty good. Now that I finished with the rasp, I'm going to use the smooth side of this file. After you use the smooth side of the rasp, you then want to go to some sandpaper. This is some 80 grit. And now that looks pretty good for now. So as you can see, the plug is in. I got some temporary tacks in, and it's sanded to the surface and looks pretty good. Hope you enjoyed watching. In the next part of the video, I will show you how to start finishing the horn up. I'll get the tacks in, polish the horn, and get an end cap and put some stain on it. So now that my plug's cleaned up, the next thing I want to do is drill the other 2 holes. So I'm going to draw a line there. I'm going to draw a line across here. I'm only going to put 4 pins in because that's the easiest to get. And it's more than adequate to hold it. And then, like I did before, In the other part of the video, this was shown in the previous part. I'm going to mark 3/16 of an inch down. And I'm going to take my drill. This is the same drill tack that you've seen in part 3. So if you want to see how I snip that tack off, that's in part 3 of the video. And I'm gonna, well, first I need to center punch them. Take your buck knife. And then I'm going to drill the hole. So now I got the holes drilled. The next thing I want to do is I actually want to take these nails out. So I'm going to pull the nails that I put in temporary out. Now because I had that horn all flexible and I stuffed this on, when it cooled, it suction cupped the thing on, and I kept them on while I was doing the rough shaping, when you see in the previous step. But now that there is very little leverage here, you can see I can tap this on this and do stuff, and it's not coming out. And this makes it so there's nothing to hit while I polish the horn. So to polish the horn, I'm actually going to start with some 60 grit paper, mainly to get the bumps out of the body of it. See, scraping does well, but the issue with scraping is you don't get the low spots out. It actually might not be a bad idea here to hit it with a file lightly. So I'm going to take this file, kind of a finer one, that will remove any bumps. You might have to jump back and forth between 60 grit paper and a scraper and a file, just to see what the horn wants. Now another note on scraping: while you can use your common pocket knife, the blade out of a utility knife seems to work really nice, because then you can flex it. So now that the body of the horn is fairly polished, the next thing you want to do is to kind of crisp up the edges around this area. Now the back of your 4-in-1 rasp is typically smooth, so what you can do is go around it like this. And that will crisp up the edges a little bit. So now I'm gonna the next thing you want to do is polish the tip up a bit, and sometimes you might have to hit it with a file a little bit if you have any big gouges. Use the fine side of the rasp, but you can probably get away with some thicker paper. And get that edge cleaned up. You then want to go to the finer grits, but when you get to them, you're probably going to hit this surface a little bit, so you'll want to hit that up a bit. And like before, like on the body, you can scrape a little bit too. That also works if you want to be more traditional. If you really want to, you can completely avoid using sandpaper and do all your finish work with a scraper. It just takes patience. So now that the horn's polished, the next thing you want to do is make a staple to hold on the plug. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a standard finishing nail, well, kind of a larger one. This one's about 2 1/4 inches long and kind of thick. And I'm going to snip off the end. If you can't get it with a snipper, you might want to use a hacksaw and just cut it off. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to flatten it out. You can, if you use heat, it works a little better, but it's not necessary. So, you can see it's kind of flat. You can actually leave it round if you want. And then I'm going to bend it. I will take a Sharpie and probably could use a tape. I'm just going to eyeball it and draw a line to make it into thirds. And then I'm going to put it back in the vise. And bend it around, just like so. And I'm going to try this cold, but it normally does better hot. You can twist this around 180 degrees. And it throws in kind of an attractive twist to it. And the other thing you got to do then is file where it's going to go in the wood with any metal file. You don't need one this big, actually. And now you have a functional staple for your horn. So one thing, if you want to add some color to your staple, you can use a torch. Let me get this. So what you do is you take it and heat it up till it turns like a bluish color. Now this step, if you don't have a propane torch, is entirely optional. But since I have one, I'm just going to make it look kind of nice. So you can see I have like a bluish color. And then cool it off. Kind of makes it look semi-attractive. So what you want to do is take the board that you used to cut the plug out, and I did the same thing when I shaped the plug. I put a rag in there and stick the horn down in there, and that'll kind of secure it. And then I'm going to take a rule and go from my 2 tack holes and draw a line, and then measure your staple. And then measure this. So you have to do some quick math or some good eyeball work if you're like me. That's correct. And then you're just going to mark where your holes go. And to get an accurate marks, I always take it and lightly tap it. And now I have 2 holes there. And then I'm going to take a drill with a 1/16 drill bit. I'm going to go in about 3/8 of an inch. That way I'm not going all the way through. And make sure your drill bit's tight in the chuck. And then now that you got that done, the next thing I'm going to do is do the final sanding on this plug before I install the staple, because it'll be, well, I'll verify the staple will go in. You can see it aligns with those holes pretty good. And I'm going to sand the plug a while and get that perfectly sanded before I install the staple. So now that the whole pilot holes are drilled and the plug is all polished up, the next thing you want to do is put the staple in. Now I'm going to cheat here because I really want to make sure it's not going to come out, and just put a little bit of super glue on it, and then just simply line up the holes. And get it in a 1/4 inch or so, trying to not hit the plug you just polished. And that should be good. I'm going to wipe the glue off. And now you can see the horn has the ability to hold a strap. I'm now going to put my tacks in. So I'm going to use these little tacks that I used as temporary ones. Drive them in a ways. And snip it off once it's in deep enough. And then going to take a fine file them, or I think I can even and that's, I would say, looking pretty good. So now that the horn is all polished up, the next thing you need to do is make a peg for the end. I'm just using, I believe this is 1/2 inch hardware store dowel and a utility knife, and I'm just going to start whittling it down evenly. And then I can see it starts to fit, so once I get it to start to fit, I will take the trusty 4-in-1 rasp. And start filing it down. See how it fits. That seems to fit pretty good now. So I'm now going to take it and take a sole and cut it. Then I'm going to put it in, whittle it a little bit. You kind of want to shape up the other end with the file. And then you want to sand it a bit. If you want, you could drill a hole in this to attach a lantern if you wanted. So now that your peg's made, the next thing you want to do is put some finish into the plug. Now in this case, I'm going to stain it with some of this cherry stain. You can use any stain. Do however you would stain or finish wood. This is just the way I'm doing it. You can, if you want, just slap polyurethane on it. Be my guess. So I'm just going to stick the swab in there. But I think with this maple and this red stain, it should look pretty nice. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the peg. Now, if you're going to engrave your horn, you could do it before you do this. But, as you can see, I got some stain on the horn. And I'm going to want to steel wool that off. So, that color looks cool if I did it evenly, but I don't think I will. There's all sorts of stuff you can do if you want. So now at the finish shot, I'm going to take and steel wool off any extra. Or polish, scrape, whatever you want to do. Make all the extra disappear. So now if you do want to engrave, like I said, I'm not an expert at it, but I'll show you how to, with simple tools, to put your initials in the date. So I'm just gonna sketch my initials on there. And the date. The year at least, not the full date. And then all you gotta do is, to do it, I'm gonna use a knife. I'm gonna take a knife, and I guess I need to buy masking tape. And I'm gonna tape this part just so I can hold the knife like this. Then I'm gonna take a stone. I'm gonna hone this to a point. And then all you gotta do after that then is hold the horn carefully. And just sketch around there. So now that you got that scratched in, you can then go over it with a Sharpie. Your scratch marks. And seal all that off. This will make it show up really bright. Now obviously they didn't have Sharpies back then, but you know, and there's more traditional, like I think it's called Indian ink or something, that you can use. As you can see, that showed up nice and bright. You know, so now it's signed, so I know I made it and I know when it was made. So the next thing I'm going to do, and again, this step's entirely optional, is I'm going to patina this horn. To do that, I have my propane cooker going, and like when I boiled the horn, you can do this on a stove just as well. I'm going to stick a kettle on there and make up a little mixture. I'm going to first start with some water. About 3/4 of the way full. And then a decent splash of apple cider vinegar. And then some onion skins. Then I'm going to let that cook away for a while. And yeah, I'm going to let it sit here till it boils. So now once the pot is boiling, I'm going to stir it up pretty good. And it's been boiling for a few minutes now. So get it really nice and stirred. And then I'm going to turn my gas way down, just enough to barely be, just enough so it stays lit. And then I'm going to take pliers with tape on them so I don't damage my staple. And I'm going to press that horn in. I'm going to try to do my best to keep the plug from getting too submerged. And I'm going to let that hang out there. And then you just kind of hang out here for, the longer you set it in, the longer it'll dark. I'll probably give it 10 minutes. Now this technique, along with a few others, was learned by the first book I bought when I got into making powder horns. It was written by the Sibleys. I will have a link to it in the description. So now that I've been sitting here for 10 minutes, I can pull it out and drain the water out. And you can see it's gonna kind of has a brownish, tannish color. Kind of like a slight orange tone to it. I think for what I want, that's pretty good. So I'm gonna let the horn sit and dry off. So now that the horn is patinaed, it kind of has a nice look to it. I'm gonna lightly steel the plug. Kind of lighten that up a bit. And then after that, and again, any of these later steps, it's all personal preference. I'm going to make it look a little prettier. And I'm going to take tung oil and put it on everything. And yeah, I'm just using not tung oil, boiled linseed oil. I'll put some on the plug. And then a really light coat on the horn. Just enough to give it that nice, I don't really want to shellac, but kind of preserve the horn. And put it on the peg too. And then I'm just gonna let that dry. So as you can see, the horn pours powder. And you can load it into your black powder rifle or your miniature cannon.